Good afternoon. My name is Tina Emery. I'm one of the co-chairs of the National Network of Parent Co-Forums and also the Southwest Regional Representative too. Marunal?
Hi, I'm Marunal Sisodia. I'm the other co-chair of the National Network of Parent Carer Forums.
Just a bit of housekeeping. So what we would say is that we're recording this session. So if you do not want to be revealed on camera, can you switch your cameras off? And the second thing is, you all know where your bathrooms are. Well, I hope so. Please feel free to go to the loo. There's no hands up and things if you need to go. And if you would like to ask a question throughout today's session, please put it in the chat and we will invite people on camera if they wish, or to take questions throughout. We're happy to do that. Over to you, Marunal.
Great. So welcome today. We're to day 2 of our virtual conference. Normally when we get together, we actually have a 2-day physical conference. But this year we've split into 2 blocks of time. The first one being in November and December before Christmas last year. And we're having a second virtual day today and tomorrow. This session is the NNPCF AGM, where we're going to update you on some of the things we've been up to and looking forward for the coming year.
So this is a slide that describes, and you can see visually who our regional reps are. And you can see that obviously I'm on the top left, and we've got Marunal in the middle, and then we've got all our regional reps who work incredibly hard. All of these reps sit on our steering group, and we have 10 regional reps altogether.
So before we actually get into some of the nuts and bolts of what we've been up to, I thought it'd be worthwhile just doing a bit of a refresher. We're always having new forums joining us, and many of you may not have had the opportunity to join us at one of our physical conferences before. It's one of the advantages of doing things virtually, is that we've managed to reach a wider range and a more diverse range of PCFs through the remote offer. Just a few slides really going over what it is the NNPCF does. So we are here to co-produce. And what do we mean by that co-production? And we operate a very simple 4-stage model, which goes round and round. And I'll talk you through a little bit of what we've been doing in each one of these blocks over the last year or so. The first and most important thing that we do is that we listen. We spend a lot of time listening, and a little bit more on how we do that in a moment. The next is we try to distill all that we've listened, all that we've heard, pull it all together into a set of national themes and national priorities. We try to pull out the things that are outliers and park those. But we often find there's some really big, overwhelming national themes that come out and emerge from all that we hear. And we try to group those into our national priorities. We then work with our partners, which is really the heart of co-production. And those partners, I'll say a little bit more about in a moment. Really, the idea being we put across the views, the lived experiences, and the priorities and themes that we've heard through listening to you in our work with the partners. And these partners are typically people who deliver services, create laws or policy, or commission services. So they own the purse strings. The idea being that by talking to them, by working with them, we can change the way they commission, we can change the way they deliver services, we can change the laws and policies that we work with for the better. Lastly, and just as important as any of the others, we try very hard to feed back to you around what we've been doing. So a very simple 4-point model of what we do. So let's say a little bit more about each one of those. So we do a lot of listening. The last year has been a little bit different for obvious reasons, but we haven't been able to get out and about in the way that we normally would. But it wouldn't be unusual for me as a co-chair to talk to probably 1,000 odd people face to face every single year in a normal year. But these are the stats for our year 2019 to 20. We're still obviously in 20 to 21, so we haven't compiled those yet, but just to give you a snapshot of what we did last year. There were over 200 regional meetings, events and activities. We did 3 member surveys, 7 consultations and calls for evidence that you fed into. There were 45,000 discussions on our closed social media group. So wow, there's a lot of information in those discussions. There was the 2-day conference in Chester, and going back to we did talk to many thousands of parent carers face to face, both Tina and myself, but also more broadly steering group members. Moving on to then what our priorities are. There are 3 places where you can go to see what our current priorities are, what we've heard. The first is the talking points. These are essentially a distillation of the key themes, the key messages that we've heard through the NNPCF. And these cover basically, I think we've got about 10 at the moment. They cover a wide range of things from education, health and care plans to what we're hearing around the experiences of children and young people on SEN support, to all the way through to things such as preparing for adulthood, employment, and mental health services. So there's just a little snapshot of some of the things that we have talking points on. You can see the link there. If you want to see the talking points, please go and take a look and download them. They're really useful documents that we've had lots of really positive feedback on. The next stop is we actually make representations. So we work with government departments and the NHS, amongst others, to actually share the views of what we've heard during the year. Again, there's a link there. Bear with us. I'm not sure that link is quite live yet, but it was due to go live anytime now, showing you what representations we've made recently. Frankly, the last year representations have been dominated by COVID. You wouldn't have it any other way. You're not unsurprising, but we've made a lot of representations about what's been happening to families under COVID. The third area where you can find what our priorities are the policy briefings that are put together by Kay Moore, who is our policy lead. I won't go through this list, but here's a list of some of the partners we've worked with over the last 2 years. And this, I think, is absolutely critical, because it's all very good us listening to what you're saying and then us sitting down and figuring out what our positions and our priorities are in these areas. But unless we can actually convince other people that we are right and they need to be doing something different, we can't effect change. Unless we can convince these people who develop services and deliver services, who commission services, who create policy and law that things need to be different, we don't change outcomes. We're just 10 people sitting in a room talking to one another. So this influencing, this partnership work that we do, this co-production work that we do, is really, really critical. And here's some of the people that we have worked with over the last couple of years. And then lastly, feeding back. We do a lot of feeding back. First, the Parent Carer Forum movement, so at our regional meetings, at our national conference, through our Facebook page. We also do a lot of feeding back through things like social media to the wider community. So we actually have a really wide Facebook social media reach, an average of approaching 100,000 per post. We get about 150,000 views through social media each month through Facebook. We've got a very, very good new website, which is seems to be liked. I see you in the comments, somebody's praising us on the new website, which is lovely. Thank you. And we also do a lot of work in feeding back, not just to parent carers, but also to other stakeholders. So Tina and myself and other steering group members do actually speak at national conferences and regional conferences a great deal. Again, spreading the word of the work we do, what it's like to be the parent care of a young person with a special educational need, and some of our priorities and some of the things we'd like to see done differently. Back to you, Tina.
Thank you. Yeah, just to say that the website is a work in progress, and whilst we had that massive list, it is only some of who we actually have conversations with. The list is too long to list, so it's really important that we stress that the work that you guys are doing on the ground, as well as what we're doing as an NNPCF steering group, is just mammoth, and we know that everybody is busy, actually more busy now. But we also wanted to discuss the topic about COVID, and it's been incredibly difficult for those with SEND, and it is the messages that we are delivering. We talk and obviously have discussions around schools, community healthcare and social care, including respite, which we know is a bit hodgepodge at the moment. It's the best way to describe it. Some areas are doing respite, but obviously some areas aren't. And we're trying to gather information and intel and passing that on to those from a national level to try and put something in place for those families who are not receiving their current standards of services. And we're trying to do that from talking to you guys, and then looking at how we can co-produce that with families moving forward. So, we do talk about those that are dealing with the curriculum, for instance, around reintegration into schools, which is the current topic, about how we get our families that have had home learning back into school, and how best we can fit that in with families with SEND, because we know it's not just a one shoe fits all. It is about having those conversations. So next slide, please, Marina. So you lot have been amazing. We have heard some real amazing stories about how you've gone from face-to-face to virtual coffee mornings, how you've offered peer support. We've heard about wellbeing boxes, and the closed group, which we regularly go on to, has shown us pictures of things that you've done, and sharing that knowledge with other forums, which is great, because we are in something that we never thought we would be in, and it's new for everybody. So trying to share those good news stories of forums that are trying to do some things, whether it's setting up a lending library for those with sensory needs in a forum, to those wellbeing boxes, or setting up virtual coffee mornings. So it is really great to see, and we do see all of them. And it's something that we do feed back to the DFE, for instance, about the amazing work that you're doing, and they are fully aware of that. How you conduct surveys, and we do that regularly as an NNPCF as well, and it highlights the issue. So there's just been some amazing work by you guys on the ground. And of course, trying to do all of that and being your mum, dad, grandparent, carer, auntie, uncle, whatever you're doing. But you just keep on going, and we are so proud of our forums and the work that you're doing. So as a result of that, we've been able to represent your views based on what we see, the conversations we've had about specific key pieces of work. You can all think back to the CFSs, the clinical, I can't put my teeth in today, clinical frailty scales that kicked off sort of March, April of last year on Twitter, and the do not resuscitate notices, which we've seen early stages of them being sort of redeveloped, if you like, and sort of coming out of the woodwork a little. But we are working with national teams around that and the language that is used. Obviously, the changes of lockdown guidance, which is actually being changed recently for the school integrations going back, and how schools and settings can actually support families in trying to get their young person and child back into school. And obviously the 1.7 billion of schools catch-up funding. We have had conversations with ministers around that, which is really positive. And the fact that we are saying to the DFE in particular about summer schools that actually we want it to be a more holistic approach, and we're still having conversations around that. So that's not a done deal yet. And as this slide suggests, we are sitting on national boards, COVID boards, and of which there is several, including the Vulnerable Children's Board. So we are sitting on quite a few key boards, if you like, trying to get your messages across. Next slide, Marina. So whilst that's all been kicking off in regards to COVID-19 and the work around that, we've also been trying to get our house in order. We don't know whether it's the right time to do it, if I'm honest, but we have gone over to new systems. So we've now operated on an Office 365, and a lot of every single regional rep has now got new IT equipment. Some of the IT equipment they had was so old, they had it before they even were in office, and so that's in excess of 5 years for some. So we've got new finance and operations management team member as well, who's looking at time management and invoicing, because FAME is now no longer going to be in use from April onwards. And also we're doing an NNPCF new website, which Elaine from Dorset has said that it's a great platform, which is great. It's still work in progress, but we're hopeful that it'll be much improved when we finish. And it's just a new way of working. And the progress of setting up a KIC, anybody who's setting up a KIC currently will realise that bank accounts in COVID is proving quite difficult, but we have got a bank account hopefully soon, but it's still, again, work in progress, and COVID is to blame for that. Next slide, please.
And just before we move on, just a couple of comments from me on that one. On the bank account, I was talking to our accountant last week, and he said, oh, you've actually got the bank's actually talking to you about a bank account.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. And we said yes, and he said, well, most of my clients, the banks are refusing to even talk to people about setting up new bank accounts. So that made me feel a little bit better that we are actually making progress. And
yeah, they have kept us up to date, but currently it's a 20-week waiting for a new account to be opened, even though they've got all the paperwork. So yes, it's COVID is proving tricky for many. But I do know of other forums in certainly my region that are trying to do that and set up a KIC, and it's not an easy feat, and it is, everybody's in the same boat, and it is what it is, and we can't help that. Yeah. Okay, so the membership is growing. We had a slight dip in 2019, mainly due to GDPR, but the dip wasn't as it wasn't hard hit as what we were expecting. And so from last year, it was 97,000, and we know it's increasing. Now, obviously, we won't get a new figure for this year because the monitoring hasn't been done yet. But as soon as the monitoring goes in, we can then gather that information, that intel. I'd be very, very surprised if we don't go over the 100,000, if I'm honest, because what I do know is that even with COVID, forum membership has grown this year. Mainly down to those wellbeing boxes, which were an absolute amazing way of gathering new membership. But we'll see. And like I said, I'll be very, very surprised. I'm just looking at the chat. Somebody's managed to get a bank account in NatWest. So if you are looking for a new bank account, go to NatWest. We've got ours through the Co-op Bank. And somebody else has said in Luton they've had fun and games too. So it's not just us. So that's good to know. Next slide, please. Okay, so the activities, we're giving you a bit of a sneaky peek on this because we don't normally talk about the activities ahead of time. We normally only tell you about the activities that we had in the last year, but we'd like to give you a bit of a sneaky peek just to see how busy we are. So last year, the AGM, we would announce that we've had 1,329 activities. This year so far, it has, well, you can see for yourself, 2,602 activities, which is an increase of 96%. And that is just our steering group membership. As you can see, we had loads of travel last year. This year, we only had 1 hour of travel. And that was an essential journey if anybody needs to ask. And last year, we had 911 days. And this year so far, bearing in mind that last year's figures include that travel time, and this year's figures, the days don't include that. So you can see just on work alone, it's 1,352. And if you want to take the hour off for travel, you can. But it's just been manically busy from a national perspective. And of course, we do have day jobs as well in regards to our forums. So it's just been incredibly busy. And we know it has been for you and the conversations we've had with forums. It is just manic out there. Next slide, please. So we wanted to just give you some update of what's next and the work that we'll be doing. So of course, we will be supporting the government in its recovery from COVID-19. We did allude to that at the last sort of webinar that we did last year. And we sort of said that once COVID ends, we've then got the recovery work, and we're fully aware that we've got that moving forward. And of course, we'll be still working with the NHS on their long-term plan and the implications of those that are going into ICS. And of course, we're working with Ofsted around their new framework, the reintroduction of the local area inspections and those inspections for schools as well. And of course, we've got the SEND review, which we will be touching on tomorrow. But we know that there's been some conversations over the weekend around the SEND review and the information that people are hearing. So we're doing another sort of Zoom session tomorrow afternoon or late morning. And then we've got the SEND review team after lunch, who will give you an update of the work and the information that they've received. Thank you. Next slide. So it's just really to recognise the fact that you have all worked incredibly hard, and we do need you more than ever. We need you to carry on in what you're doing, in feeding into us, having conversations on the closed group, because it is really good that you do have those conversations and a way to offload, because it does mean that we can have those conversations with you and get some sort of feeling about what's happening, and feedback that if we need to. So it's really important that if you carry on with what you're doing an amazing job. I don't know if we've got any more slides, have we? No.
Just a reminder of who we all are. Hopefully all of you know where to contact us, where to find us, and please do. We rely very much upon your feedback and your contact to inform and direct the work that we do. So please do reach out to us all. And then lastly, we've just left a little bit of time to answer any questions that you might have. I think the method for this is please put any questions, if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat and we can answer them, or if you would prefer, we're very happy to put you on screen and you can ask your question to us live, and we'll do our best to to answer them. Someone's just asking to go back to the contact page, so I'll just do that. I'll leave that up whilst we wait for any questions to come in. So please pop your questions in the chat, and if you'd like to ask us anything, please indicate in the chat. We'll get you sorted.
Or you can, like Marino said, you can sort of show yourself on screen. We don't mind if you don't mind, and no question is off limits really. So ask away. Don't be shy. Don't be scared. I think we're friendly, aren't we? It's silence. I don't like silence. There must be questions. I know some of you will be glad to get back, get a half an hour back if you like. You've probably booked out till 2:30 for this call, and we understand that. My voice is going already. So yeah, please. Oh, we've got a chat. What are you most proud of during the year? That's a good question, Sarah. So I think for us, it's just it's the fact that when we had the conference in Chester, which was it was interesting because everything we had on the agenda didn't go to plan, and then we didn't anticipate COVID happening literally 5 months later. And I think for me, I think it's the way that we've all just rose up to the challenge. You know, we are all parent carers, every single one of us, and we all work in forums, and we all, you know, for some of us, we do regional work as well, and then this national work. I just think that we've just literally leapt at the challenge, and I think that's for everybody to see. And I think the NNPCF is now, we had a good reputation to start off with, but our reputation now is even more so because we just like a challenge. I think that's the beauty of being a parent carer. I think we're used to that in our day-to-day life anyway. So for this, you know, the COVID challenge was just walk in the park for us parent carers, and that's what I'm mostly proud of, and the team that we have, and I'm from the Southwest, and my Southwest region are just amazing, and I know that every regional rep says the same about their region. So I'm, you know, really proud of everybody, really.
Yeah, and and perhaps if I come in on and just emphasize that, the one thing I've been most proud of, so I'll answer that question in two parts. The one thing I'm most proud of, and Tina is exactly right, is just the resilience and innovation of the parent carer forum movement over the last year, because this has been an incredibly tough year. Like, let's not kid ourselves, it's been horrible, absolutely horrible for many of us for large periods of time. But through that, the parent carer forum movement has just not only kept going, but actively really represented a vulnerable section of society, and done it with really effectively. The voice has been heard. So I'm incredibly proud of that. And it's Tina and I sometimes say that, we're the co-chairs of the movement, but it's a real privilege to be co-chairs of the movement. And and it's not like we think of ourselves as leading the movement or being the bosses of the movement. It's the other way around. We are very much, I talk about, myself and Tina having 100,000 bosses. So we do listen to you and are very much led by what you want, and what you've been doing is phenomenal. The second answer to that question, I think, is, if you look at what we've been able to do with some of that influence and the information you've given us, it is things like, during the year, just one example. So the 1.7 billion of catch-up funding that the government has now announced for to help children catch up, we were absolutely instrumental in getting in the first round of that funding, getting written into it that it was not just academic funding, and we got specifically written into the guidance stuff about how that funding could be used for allied therapies, such as speech and language therapies, such as dyslexia support, such as occupational therapy. So it wasn't just academic, and that probably wouldn't have been in that first round of guidance had it not been for the parent carer forum movement. So so we can point to some really specific things this year that have made a difference because we've been there.
I'm just reading the chat, and thank you for everybody who's put in about their thanks. It's lovely to see, and including the new forum in Solihull that's had some support from an associate, and the NNPCF as well as contact. So that's really lovely to see. There is one question in regards to monitoring catch-up funding, because their area doesn't know or doesn't seem to know what it needs to be spent on. So I think that's a very valid question.
Should I try and take that one, Tina?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So catch-up funding is a really hot topic at the minute, and you'll all understand why. There's lots and lots of discussions going on around, exactly what form catch-up should take, and how it should be spent. So one of the things that we are really pushing hard is that catch-up funding should be any spending of the catch-up money should be co-produced, and it should be co-produced when it comes to SEND with both the local parent carer forum and with individual parents. So it's not just a one size for all fits offer. So try and get that tailored. Now that's going to be tricky because the majority of the catch-up funding is going directly to schools. And schools have, don't always work with parent carer forums, don't always co-produce. But we are pushing that there should be some sort of oversight of that at a local authority area. As to whether we get that or not, I don't know. So that we are pushing very hard on how that, some more transparency around that catch-up funding. And we've had some really great examples of where parent carer forums have been involved, where schools have pulled money across the local area, and parent carer forums have been involved in spending that money and even sort of commissioning some things as well. So we've passed those examples on to the DFE to try to encourage them to put similar things in place around the rest of the country. The other thing to say on catch-up is that it's been very evidence-led. You'll have seen that there's lots of stuff in the press a couple of weeks ago where Gavin Williamson was saying that they might do things like extending the school day or shortening holidays. Now, we fed back really strongly on that one, around particularly on extending the school day, which is, we know full well that many SEND kids are not ready, are knackered by the end of their school day. and extending the school day won't really help that our cohort particularly. So we've fed back really strongly. But we've also fed back things such as we also hear from many parents that the summer holidays in particular are really, really long, and readjusting and reintegrating after the summer holidays is a hard thing. So some shortening of the holidays in the future may actually help our children, but again, needs to be consulted on very, very carefully. What's almost certain that will be happening is that some sort of summer schools will not be compulsory. So rest assured you won't be made to go. But again, we're pushing that there should be a strong SEN element to those summer schools, and they should be holistic, not just academic.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that as well. You know, the conversations that we've had is that it should be holistic. It should be looking at emotional support for these children, young people. And actually, the conversation we've had is that actually it should be much broader. It's not just about those children with complex needs, because lockdown has affected many families, some of which haven't actually got SEND, but now are affected because of the lockdown and the fact that they've been out of school for quite some time, and to reintegrate and catch up is quite tricky for some children, young people, because we can't be led by those children, young people that have a diagnosis, because as you know, the families that we represent, a lot of them are trying to get diagnosis and either fail or it takes a lengthy time, and we don't want them to lose out from that package of emotional support. So it is the message that we're having out, you know, with the DFE and others around supporting families that might need it. Is there anything else?
There was another question in the chat around what the DFE view was on back to school.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to start on that one, Tina, and I'll chip in as well? Or
yeah, I mean the DFE, you know, it's firm in its approach of, you know, trying to get as many children back into school as possible. You know, there is certain elements around safeguarding, for instance. What we know as well, and what you will know on the ground, is that the increase of domestic abuse, those increases in you know, child at risk, not just with SEND families but every family, and so there is this almost urgency about trying to get children back into school. What we do know is that it is about conversation. So if your child is, we do know that there's lots of children that are still shielding because of their complex health nature. And it is about having those conversations with settings. And the DFE have been very, very sort of firm about it, that actually if a child can't attend, then it is about those conversations. And there should be, they understand and recognise that for some children, young people, it might be an integrated return. It's not just going to be a case of, oh, lockdown's over, let's get them back. And it is about making sure that those conversations happen. So actually the school settings, that whilst their door is open, they should be having conversations with families where it is difficult for a child just to go back to school, especially after having such an extended leave time, if you like. So it is about working in co-production with families, and it is making sure that those conversations are a two-way conversation. So actually the family knows their child and young person best, and if they really can't attend full-time straight away, then they should be having those conversations, and there should be a plan in place for them to do so. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Marina?
Just on that, is that it's still very early days, I think, on the return to school. So we've been back, you know,
a week,
a maximum, and we know that many children are filtering back more slowly than that, especially in secondary. So many children will not have even been back for that long. I think the key message from us to you is please talk to us as a steering group and let us know how the back to school is going for you and in your areas, your local areas, because so far we've actually had quite very little feedback. We have asked, but there's been very little feedback, and what we have heard has actually surprisingly perhaps been rather positive, that people are making reasonable adjustments, people are being filtered back safely. We've had a few instances where almost schools have contacted families and said, actually, it's best if you don't come back till after Easter. SEN families, and we've also had some cases of schools where they've applied very strict disciplinary policies and have already threatened exclusion from some SEN kids, but those have been really quite isolated. But if you are hearing that stuff, we rely on you telling us, so please tell us what you are hearing.
What I would say is that in regards to the testing regime, we've not had any feedback in regards to any issues around that. What we do know is that you need to give consent, and if your child and young person really would struggle having the lateral flow testing, it isn't mandatory at this point. So if they really can't do it, again, it's about not giving consent and having those conversations. But going back to Marunal's point, that the attendance for schools is actually higher. It's at the highest point it's had in the whole of COVID, which is really positive, and the DfE are really pleased about that. In particular, the special schools, which is great that we're hearing that. But again, it goes back to you feeding back to us, and also as well, if what we did put on the closed group about the protocols of if there's a setting that really is struggling to meet needs of children, young people, and it's causing real issues within your local area, what we said is you need to raise it with your local authority. But then if that isn't working, then you can raise it with your DfE advisor. And we did put details out as a pinned post on the closed group, but obviously making sure that you CC your regional rep into that email, just so we're aware. And again, it's about having those conversations with the DfE directly, who will look into it for you.
Yeah, and I think what we did say to the DfE last week, just to re-emphasize some of those messages around mandatory attendance, that it's mandatory, but it should be co-produced. Let's be clear around this, that we're not forcing any children back into school at the point where they're feeling anxious or uncomfortable, or similarly messages around wearing of masks. Any school that has a no mask, no place policy, please let us know about, because the DfE are really clear that is unlawful. That's not an unreasonable, that's a reasonable adjustment to make for children with SEN. Any school that has a no test, no place policy, please tell us about that straight away, because again, the DfE are really crystal clear. The guidance is clear. That's unlawful. So if you are seeing instances of hardline policies being applied, please let us know. And as Tina says, tell your local authority, tell the school, tell your NNPCF steering group rep, and we'll gladly take it up with the Department of Education.
Just to sort of highlight as well, it's not just the DfE that we're working with. We are working with other schools, AP, for instance, alternative provision, schools recovery. We are working across lots of different areas, and the one thing that we do focus on quite a bit is the holistic approach. So it's the children's mental health, how that's affected, and it is the conversations that we're having. I'm personally quite passionate about that. I know Marunal is as well, but it is those conversations that we're having that actually, we're in the most extreme weird of times, and us as adults struggle with it from time to time, being out of routine, not being able to do what we need to do or what we used to do. And for our children, young people, particularly those that can't articulate how they're feeling necessarily, it's those children that we have the emphasis on. And it's something that we are extremely passionate about as a team, to making sure that the mental health needs of children and young people are met as well. And it's certainly early days, but it is the conversations that we're having. For some of us, we sit on the mental health support teams regional board, and so it is discussions that we're having in there as well. So it is, we are having lots of conversations, not with just the DfE, but with NHS England, for instance, with the regional mental health teams, and autism and LD regional teams. You sit on the national board for the autism and LD board as well, Marunal, don't you?
Yeah, it's across the cross system working group. Yeah.
So we do have lots of conversations for children and young people that we talk about, and the effects that has on our families. If you have a child that's struggling mentally with their mental health, then it affects the whole family, and that's the conversations that we're having as a team. Is there anything, it was just something that was in the chat that I answered. Is there anything else that is there any other questions? Oh, the person said thank you, that's good. Is there anything else that anybody else wants to raise? Because I know that you've got us in this one room for an extra 20 minutes. I know we might not last 20 minutes, but is there anything else you want to ask us? Because we don't often have this conversation at a conference, do we, face to face, because of the amount of people that there are. Has there been a difference between the full school return on the 8th of March and the post-16 return not being majority face-to-face teaching, and young people then not going back until after Easter for some? I think that depends on each region, Katie. I'm one of the regional reps that does have post-16 child with Zend, and he's back already, and I do think that is different in each area. At this moment in time, nothing has been said to us. We've not had an awful lot of feedback in regards to the mandatory return or whatever. So if there is something in particular that you want to address, I'm just looking at the chat. If there's anything you want to address to us, then drop us an email. Any one of those on the screen, so you can even email me on Maroon, or if you want to email us together, you can do co-chair at co-chairs at nnpcf.org. I'll put it in the chat. I'm just looking at the chat now that's coming up. So they've had greater attendance online sessions. I don't think that's true for some cases. From what we hear, certainly with post-16, there is some real issues, not with children and young people with SEND specifically, but it'll be interesting moving forward what the figures for NEETs are going to be. And it's something that I'm sort of keeping an eye on. Rachel, in regards to health funding forums, it is discussions that you can have with your NHS England leads. They're very, very direct and to the point that actually CCG should be funding your forums. And if not, then I would suggest you contact your regional rep if you don't know who your regional NHS England leads are. Rachel, I'm happy, since you're in my area, I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking at these.
On the just on the health funding for forums. So we have had this conversation nationally in the, can the Department for Health and Social Care or NHS England directly fund forums in the same way that the Department for Education does? Frankly, we've had little or no joy with this. It's a topic we raise pretty much every single year, and often more than once a year, and in the run-up to fundings. The answer we get back all the time is, I think, unsatisfactory, but it is the answer we get back, which is that actually the majority of health service funding is devolved into, at the moment, CCGs, soon to be ICSs, and CCGs are empowered to fund organizations like parent carer forums, local representative groups. Many of them do already, but most don't. So if you aren't funded by health, go and have a word with your local CCG and build those links. And if you need the help of your regional steering group member, then feel free to recruit that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the Southwest, we're very, very fortunate. A lot of the forums are funded by their individual CCGs or ICS, but we know that that's not the case fully nationally. So it is conversations around having those conversations with your CCGs first, or ICS, and then if not, speak to your regional representative, who will then have conversations with your regional SEN leads for NHS England. And there is 7 regions for NHS England nationally, so it might differ depending on where you live, because I know some of them are conjoined in different ways and it's quite confusing. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat. It's good attendance for some. Has the NNPCF noticed a marked increase in forums working with health? We wouldn't know that necessarily at this point, because Contact is the one that has that information for monitoring. But certainly for me as a regional person, I work more with health than I do with education currently. I do work with education, but certainly the work streams that I work in is mainly for health. And that has increased. In regards to children not being able to use hand gel because of eczema, again, that's a reasonable adjustment, and it is about a conversation. You can get lots of different hand gels that are better for those with eczema or dermatitis for some children. And it's maybe you can have a conversation about providing your own, because it is about making sure that the child and young person is happy as well and feels safe if they're attending. And we know what children are like with their hand washing routine. It might not exist. So it's about maybe finding something that works well for your child. I think that's pretty much all the.
There was one more question which I'm not sure I've got the answer to, which is from Donna Marie in Luton, saying, "Wonder if you're aware of work carried out to identify patterns of which infant school children who are diagnosed later have come from." I'm not sure I quite understand your question there. I'm really happy if you want to email me offline on that one. But if I think I understand it rightly, you're saying that basically infant school, some children are being diagnosed later. Now, there has definitely been some of that nationally, but largely because children have been absent from school, and so SEN has been diagnosed later, or different behaviours have been diagnosed later. So that there is an element of that. But if you want to drop me an email, perhaps we can have an email conversation or even a phone conversation offline around that.
Yeah, definitely. We're more than happy to take any queries via email if you need to. In regards to Katie's comment about joint service level agreements, I think that is happening more and more. Certainly in the Southwest, I've got 15 forums, and out of the 15 forums, I think only 4 are not funded by health as well. So that just puts it into some sort of, certainly when I took on the role 3 years ago, there definitely was more forums that weren't funded than were. So it's definitely having those conversations and a change in, and also the fact that there's that recognition now of what we do. And if they're doing it at a regional or a national level, then those conversations at local level should become a little bit easier. Has there been a push for the NHS, therefore CCGs, to look at hospital admission avoidance for children and young people, and funding may be available to forums if you're interested in this work? Okay, so that's in regards to the admissions avoidance work for Zilla, of which each region is currently doing a piece of work, and there is a small amount of funding for that. And we're certainly in my area, I've been doing it co-produced with my forums, of which we can share at a later date if needs be. Somebody else has put, we are pushing for joint funding. We are finding our LA is not aiding the discussions, which is interesting. If the LA is funding, then we should be aiding the conversations with health to try and make sure that that burden is shared. And I would say that most local authorities are helpful in that regard. If they're funding a forum, they would expect health to do as well. May not match fund it, but they certainly have discussions around that. Waiting lists for children with SEND, how can they be improved? It's just having those conversations with your health and making sure the pathways for that service is right and proper. If the waiting times are exceeding expectations, then it is about making sure that the pathways to other services are firmed up. So at least then families are feeling supported whilst they're waiting for, often it could be described as an autism diagnosis, perhaps, where the waiting time is ludicrous in there's no other word to describe it. But it is about making sure that the pathways are clear and that there is support along the way, and then families at least know that they're supported.
And on that one, I think that that's somewhere where I think that there's a very COVID specific impact, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
We have to be really clear around this. There's 2 things that I think we need to talk about here. The first of which is that there's a backlog around a lot of these services because of COVID, because staff and certainly the early part of the pandemic, following NHS England guidance, staff were pulled off some more routine activities, and so there's a backlog of services to a lot of our kids, where particularly things such as eye services or dental appointments, or even things such as speech and language therapies and community pediatrician diagnoses of things such as autism or ADHD are being delayed. So there's one element of catch up and recovery there. The second bit I think is going to be really important as well there is that some additional harm will have been done to many children through this period. We just haven't understood what that additional harm is, be that the impact of having to wait longer for diagnoses, or actually additional impact of isolation or missing therapies. We know that there's not only catch up, but some children will have fallen further behind or be more greatly disadvantaged. And I think that hasn't quite been understood yet, and I think that's going to be one of the big focuses of our work coming forward. Because if you remember, going back to the slide that we spoke to around our 4 priorities, the first of which was COVID, supporting COVID recovery, and we rest assured we'll be coming out to you very shortly to ask for what your thoughts are around those 2 areas.
And I think as well, the question we need to ask is not just about the children and young people, of course, that they are the most important thing in these discussions, but it's also about the families that support them. And so my worry is that, people haven't been going to hospital appointments, doctor's appointments, and what's the increase in those that, for instance, haven't had support around their cancer treatment, or even getting that diagnosis. So my concern is much wider as well around the families that support these children and young people, and the impact on COVID moving forward of that. So it's not specifically COVID related, but it is because of the situation that we are in. I'm just looking at the chat. Nice to see you, Joe. Enjoy the rest of your day. Absolutely, parent carers are the one constant, and we do need support, and that's why I think when we look at COVID recovery, we need to look at the much wider aspect of it, and see the consequence of living in these times, and what the long-term prognosis is, if that's the right word, because I don't, even if COVID was to end tomorrow and everybody was vaccinated, I think the long-term effects of what we've just been through for the last year is going to be quite telling, I think, for a while. CCG in Solihull saying that they are planning a 10-year plan of recovery, which is quite interesting. I wouldn't have thought it'd be 10 years, but it could be, and we just don't know at this point. And it is the lasting effects on services as well, and schools. Okay, yeah, there has been discussions with NHS England around GP surgeries and registration of carers. Is something that's ongoing. I know that there's been a really good piece of work in Somerset, for instance, where they had conversations with their CCGs and they clarified points, so then unpaid carers could get their vaccinations. But we know that in some areas, it's even in Somerset, for instance, it's worked really well in some districts, but not in others. And we're finding that quite a lot actually in other areas, that, some counties are doing really well in one pocket, but not so great in others. And it is that mishmash of information. And we have shared with NHS England around the guidance that they issued and then changed it at the last minute, and it's caused confusion. So we are constantly having those conversations, which is why they released a SOP, and don't ask me what SOP means because I can't remember, around the guidance. That's it, thank you. But they released that last week, just to clarify the position on unpaid carers. So we are having those conversations, and it is good that we hear things of especially with forums who are getting involved, to try and make sure that everything is how it should be. And they did put that, I think, on the closed group on the NNPCF. Joe has replied, I think, yeah, brilliant. So Joe's put something in the chat and said that her local council got unpaid carers to register with the local carer support charity, and that made the coordination much better. And I think that that's it in a nutshell. It is about having those communications and making sure that there's always options, and it's always about making sure that unpaid carers aren't left behind. And it is something that we did raise at the very beginning when they announced paid carers, because some of us, you know, we're not lucky. Some surgeries were asking for proof of carers allowance. Well, some of us can't claim that for various different reasons, and that's an unfair system. So we need to make sure it's equitable. And we do know that actually, if we all became ill with COVID, it would have a different catastrophic response from the government, because they'll all be put in social care involvement, which would be costly. So we did remind them of that. So yeah, so there is lots of guidance out there that you can show, but it hasn't been clear, and we did feed that back very clearly to them. Is there anything else? I'm just conscious we've got 5 minutes left. So this is your 5-minute warning. Bruno, you've had thanks from Essex in the chat. Did you see that?
It's a pleasure working with the guys in Essex as well. Feeling is mutual.
I've got quite a lot of Southwest contingents in the chat, which is quite nice.
One thing that actually hasn't come up yet very much, I'm a little bit surprised about, is vaccinations for children.
Yeah.
And maybe if I say a little bit around that, at the moment, the facts are as follows: that the Pfizer vaccine is licensed for use on young people aged 16 and above. AstraZeneca is licensed for use on children aged 18 and above. That's as of this morning. There has been some vaccination of children above the age of 12 in exceptional circumstances where there's been clinical need, but very rare. And those vaccinations where they've been given to children above the age of 12 have been considered off license. The fact of the matter is that COVID just does not directly impact children very much at all. You know, the mortality rates and the impact rates for children when it comes to COVID are roughly similar to seasonal flu, an average seasonal flu season. So children are not at risk from COVID, and until we get more data around the safety of vaccines on children, then we can't authorize a mass vaccination of children will not be authorized and will not be forthcoming. The best data I understand, I was told this morning, is from Israel, where they've had 600 to 800 vaccinations of children above the age of 12 with the Pfizer vaccine, and there's no at the moment, there's no indications that it's damaging, but that 600 to 800 cohort isn't really enough data to base sort of safety recommendations on. So I think realistically, the vaccination of children is some time off, but also probably not very necessary for the safety of children directly.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it, that we know that, you know, the LD community, with Joe Wiley in particular highlighting it, it's really tricky, and it is those conversations, and it is about, if your child is under a paediatrician, for instance, for health conditions, it's worth having a conversation with them to see if they're at risk. But yeah, we are such in the unknown with this disease, this infection, this condition, and we don't know what the implications are for those. What we are hearing is stories of long COVID. We do have somebody that's, you know, as part of the NNPCF family who is suffering from COVID and did have COVID at the very beginning, and she's learning about the effects of long COVID now. And it's just what we hear, isn't it? And that's the problem, is that we are in a pandemic that we didn't foresee. We didn't know how long it was going to last for. Certainly the conversations that we had as a group was that we would be working from home, but in 6 months' time, we're probably back together face to face. How stupid and naive were we? And it is about, this is the tricky thing, is that services are trying to do this as well. And I think we just need to be mindful of that yes, they do have legal duties that they should be doing, and they should be supporting families, but equally, you know, they're trying to do the same and trying to figure out what they need to do. And guidance sometimes hasn't been clear. You know, the guidance around vaccinations, for instance, caused all sorts of things in regards to unpaid and paid carers. And Sue's just put in the chat about Contact having a template letter for those with the GPs who are struggling with the concept of unpaid carers. You should use that template. It has helped lots of families. But this is the thing, is that we just do not know so many things. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what the lasting results are. We don't know how long, you know, how will we need a booster for our COVID vaccinations if we're lucky enough to have them, you know, in a year's time, 6 months' time, or whatever. This is the problem that we are facing, is that we just have never been in this predicament before as a country. And I think, you know, it's a case of just talking to one another so we can keep each other informed. How about jobs for young carers that are 17 years old? I think it is about having conversations with your GP surgery to make sure that you are down as a carer. And if you're under the age of 18, then you'd have to have the Pfizer vaccination. What I do know is, in certain circumstances with young people, if they turn up for their vaccination and it's the other variants, whether it's AstraZeneca or whatever, and they've been asked to come back on another day when the Pfizer vaccination has been given. So I do know of that. I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, no, I agree, Helen. We do need to be aware of children that have had COVID and the long-term effects. I think that sort of, we need to be mindful of the carers as well. So anybody who's caring for a child and young person who's had COVID and has had, you know, may have long COVID as a result of. So yeah, so I'm just looking at Katie's comment, use the letter that's on Contact's website. In regards to Medway, your area is currently having 16, 17-year-olds classed as vulnerable, unable to get Pfizer. I think that's about a CCG. So I would highlight that issue with your CCG to see if they can get some improvements around getting hold of the Pfizer vaccine rather than GPs. And if that conversation's not working, then contact your regional rep, who will be able to advise you on your next step, is what I would say to the Medway parents. Anything else? We're overrun now. That's always the way, isn't it? We had loads of time and then we overrun. Is there anything else before we close? And it's nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Anything else? Oh, everybody's saying thank you now.
That's good. Lovely. Thank you. It's from my point of view, it's been great to have the opportunity to speak to you directly.
Yeah.
You know, please do talk to your steering group representative on a regular basis. If you want to talk directly to Tina or myself, we are always happy to talk to parent carers.
I'll put the emails in our emails in the chat.
So please do contact us as well. We're really happy to speak to people. It's always interesting for us to speak to people outside of our area as well. So that's fine. Tomorrow's sessions, we've got a session around lunchtime tomorrow, I think it is, where I'm going to present the work that we've been doing, the representations that the NNPCF has made into the Sender Review, which is one of the big things that's coming up for us nationally at the moment. And then in the afternoon, we've got the Sender Review team themselves presenting to us, and that'll be really interesting to see what they can share with us at this stage. So hopefully see all of you, if not many of you, tomorrow as well.
And I just want to
tonight as well.
yeah, I'm just looking at the chat very quickly. Thank you for your comments around the AGM, and that it's some of you, it's been your first, and it's because it's accessible in regards to a virtual platform, and that's been really important. We should have put it into the slides really. We had 1,600 people sign up to the last sessions that we did back in the last day of November, first week of December. We had 1,100 people attend. So we do realise that it's really, really important. And moving forward around conferences and AGMs, we do have to think about the blended approach, which is the new word we're using now, in regards to doing face-to-face and the virtual platform, because it does really work. Yes, Christina, this has been recorded, and yes, it will be sent out as well, or there'll be a link that you can access it online, and we will be able to share the slides as well if that's helpful. Is there anything else that anybody needs to say before we go? Just to say thank you very much for joining us, taking an hour out of your day to come and listen to us sort of gabbling on, meaning me more than you, Marina, of course. And if there's anything else that you need to get hold of, or if there's any help or support, then just email us. You've got our emails addresses now. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.